Hello, and welcome to the Female Finance Collective, where we encourage women to have open and honest conversations about all things money. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about something that is near and dear to my heart, saving money on food. And this can be applicable when it comes to like dining out and all kinds of ways. But we're going to really focus today on saving money on food when it comes to food shopping and food at home. And if you're working on that, you're also going to be saving money when it comes to dining out because you'll be more likely to eat at home, which we all know, even though sometimes it's a bummer, eating home is much more affordable than dining out, right? I didn't want to cook dinner last night, but I was like, we're going to have leftovers because I don't want to spend the money to dine out, but I also do not want to cook. So what I want to know, Marilee, is what is your number one tip? If you could only give somebody one tip for saving money on food expenses for your home, what would it be?
I'll share the one thing that worked the best for me. I don't love to cook, so I find meal prep to be stressful. I've always worked full time, and mealtime happens to be after I had picked up kids from daycare, and I was already juggling, settling down from a work day and trying to get food on the table. So the number one tip I have is come up with just a menu. So, 10 different meals that are easy to make, that you can make quickly with basic ingredients. And I have them written down on the notes on my phone so that I can quickly think of, what I'd like to make for a meal that night. And I keep all of those ingredients on hand. So it's usually some sort of meat. It's often chicken, vegetables, and then, rice, potato, something like that. So just knowing how to make some simple meals can definitely be a big money saver. Sybil, what's your number one tip?
Yeah, I would say my number one tip is making enough at dinner to have leftovers the next day. So planning that intentionally, making more servings of whatever you're making for dinner. Our kids have eaten leftovers their whole lives. It wasn't until just recently, junior, senior year of high school, where they're a little bit like more rebellious about that, but that saves us tons of money. It also provides a healthy meal for lunch. Oftentimes, dinners make good lunches. But that's my like number one money saving thing for sure, is to think about how leftovers can provide another meal and save you money on buying that next meal for sure.
Also leftovers saves you time, which is
For
really
sure.
important factor that I think we need to consider because sometimes the reason I have a lot of things to say about groceries, so ladies just cut me off if I get a little out of hand. Um, Sometimes what really costs us a lot at the grocery store is buying prepared foods, whether it's vegetables they've already cut, fruit they've already cut, things in the freezer section, those prepared meals that we just have to heat up. All of that is great because we think, oh, we're going to save so much time, but it is significantly more expensive than doing it yourself. So I'm not saying never do that, but it is a lot more expensive to do it that way. So I recommend saving those kind of prepared things for times when there's soccer practice till 7 o'clock at night and we're not going to get home and we're not going to have time to cook. So it'll still be less expensive than ordering out, but we know that it's not something we want to do every night because it costs more than preparing it ourselves. And so the same is true for leftovers. If you prepare additional servings the night before, you can either repurpose it, which I'm a huge fan of, for dinner later in the week, or use it for lunch. So then you're saving yourself tons of time by kind of cooking or preparing things out in one sitting and then reusing it several times. And I know there's going to be people who are yelling at their computers or their phones. I hate leftovers. They're gross. But leftovers can be amazing if you're thoughtful about what you're creating leftovers out of and how you're using the leftovers. I'm just going to share one. So I'm going to say this tip that goes with this, and then you guys can go from there. So I'm a huge fan of meal planning. I think that is the best way to save money. If you have a meal plan, you're organized when you go to the grocery store, you know exactly what you need. You're not as tempted to like put extra stuff in the cart. You're not buying food that's going to go to waste because you have it planned out, you know exactly what you need. And when you meal plan, you can strategize for this. So I'm going to roast a whole tray of vegetables. I'm going to use those as my side this night. We're going to add them to tacos this night. The next night, we're going to use them in some other way. So you're not eating the same meal over and over, but you're not having to re-prepare some of the elements. And if you take some time to plan ahead, that can be a huge savings of money and time.
I love
I
that.
love
You
that.
know, what came to mind, Jen, when you said that was oftentimes we'll try to pick up a rotisserie chicken that's already cooked and warm when we're at the grocery store on a Sunday or something. And then make that into a chicken salad for lunch, like for sandwiches, and then like put it in taco meat, you know, as tacos or something else for a couple meals. But we'll shred it, you know, and like prepare it right then and there, maybe eat part of it. But that's a tradition in Belgium too. So in Belgium, the markets, you would go on a Sunday and those rotisserie chickens would be all in a truck and everybody bought their rotisserie chicken for their Sunday meal. And you could buy two if you wanted the whole thing, you know, as your meal, and then think ahead, like what could I make with it this week? And it just saves you so much money and time for sure. Like you said, yeah, I love that.
I'm definitely a fan of the rotisserie chicken as well. It seems to work for everyone in our family. And I find one of the curveballs we face is with little kids. Sometimes they love a particular meal and then their preferences change. So we're often navigating some of the changes in terms of what they enjoy eating and balancing that with, feeding everyone at a reasonable rate. I do try to have some sort of daily budget in mind when it comes to grocery shopping. So most of our meals, I like to kind of use that 80-20 rule. So 80% of the time, our meals are, fairly standard. And then once in a while, we might get something that's a little bit more expensive and time consuming to prepare. Looking at your calendar for the week ahead is definitely helpful. So you can identify those days where meal prep and eating at home could be a challenge. And maybe that means making sandwiches or, packing some snacks so that you're not grabbing food on the go. The other thing that comes up, food is definitely a big budget item for most families. And there seems to be this debate between, do you shop frequently or do you go less often to reduce the frequency and to reduce the purchases? So I'd love to hear which side of that debate you are on. I'll share mine. I tend to find that what works the best for our family is to go twice a week. We are lucky to have the time to be able to do that. So I can pop out, midday while I'm working from home and go to the grocery store and grab what we need. I didn't always have that luxury. But for right now, going a couple times a week seems to reduce our food waste. So this is what we're working with right now. But Jen, I'd love to hear your strategy on frequency of shopping.
So I'm very similar to what you said. I buy a lot of fresh produce. And so my strategy is how long can I keep the produce before it goes bad? So I can't buy it like 8 days in advance, right? So I tend to go, my meal plans are usually 5 to 7 days. And then I'll go to the store every 5 days. There's some produce you can push a little bit longer, right? Like, I don't know, but broccoli just seems to last forever in our fridge. So I'll buy like extra broccoli, or we have things like cauliflower rice in our freezer. And so I can kind of pull sometimes from that. I typically prefer fresh produce, which I know is not for everybody. So if you do have a lot of fresh produce, you have to kind of go like every 5 to 7 days. If you don't, you can go longer if you use like frozen fruits and vegetables and things like that. What I think the more you go, the more you spend. And so I know there are people who go to the grocery store every day or every other day because they don't create a meal plan. They're like, okay, what's for dinner tonight? Okay, tacos. They just go get the stuff for tacos and go home. But that is not, in my opinion, that is not the best use of your time. It's just taking you so much more time to go every 1 to 2 days. And also you end up spending more money because you can't always, right? If you're not being thoughtful and strategic about how you're buying and what you're using things for, you're going to buy more food that wastes, right? Because no, most of us don't want to eat tacos 3 days in a row. I mean, some tacos is a bad choice. Most of us probably would eat tacos 3 days in a row, but something that you can get sick of the same meal over and over. So I think it's better to strategize a little bit and go I mean, I like 5 to 7 days, but that's very similar to it's about 2 times a week, right? It kind of averages out to that.
Yeah, we do 5 to 7 days here and now. And I say here and now because living in different parts of the world definitely influenced our grocery shopping at that particular location. So here in the States, we do the weekly planning, meal planning up on a whiteboard, put in what meals we're going to have for the week, and then we make our grocery list from there. I would say if you still have a strict meal plan and you go more often, you can get away with maybe not spending more
That's
when you're
true.
used to just I'm getting these 2 items. It's definitely a difference of like in the States, like getting in your car, driving to the grocery store. It's a big ordeal that you kind of want to do once a week, where when the grocery store is doors down, like it was in Belgium, and everything's small and carried by hand or on public transportation, you end up going more often. So that could lead to spending more money. Completely agree, especially like with the kiddos. They, want to get candy more often, or those special treats you might buy more often when you grocery shop more often as well, because you're just like, oh, I haven't had these in a while. More exposure, more. But either way, I think what we've talked about so far being the most important part of it is that meal planning, is that intentionality of like, what am I going to buy? And that saves us so much money. And then maybe even like we talk about having fun money, we can have fun money in our food budget as well. Once a month, I want to get a special dessert because I've been not eating out as much. And, I want to treat myself, and it's still a third of the price of what it would be going out to eat, for example. Right? We don't want to like eliminate, we at the Female Finance Collective are not encouraging you to get rid of all fun and joy. But instead plan for it, right? And make it intentional. And then it's even more joyous. Jen, you make like fun events with holidays and stuff. And a lot of times those include food, and that whole makes it an experience. And that is money well spent at that point, right? You're nourishing yourself and you've created this beautiful experience that you can remember.
Yeah, that's important to us. Like food is part of how, I guess, my whole life, how we like celebrated things and did things. And I don't mean food in like this gorging yourself, like have a huge feast kind of way necessarily, but like just doing things in a fun way, like stopping for these fun sandwiches we loved on our way home sometimes, or, things like that were always part of our celebration. And so I like to eventize things. I like
Yeah.
to make them fun. And so, you end up spending a little bit more when you do things like that. So we're not doing it every day or every week for sure. But it is less expensive. Like for football, we did this whole, oh my gosh, things are falling on my desk right now. For the football season, we love American football in our house. And so I like made a different theme of a meal every week, depending on who our teams were playing. And so that was not any crazy expense. It was the same type of food we would have probably made anyway, just in a different, maybe something I hadn't tried before, hadn't made before. And so it wasn't crazy to our budget, but it was actually more fun than just making what we would have normally made. And definitely, even if I did spend a little extra, much less expensive than if we would have gone to watch the game, like at a restaurant or a bar or somewhere like that. So you can use food to have celebrations and make things fun and try new experiences as well. And you're still saving if you're doing it at home. It also is fun to do it together. I think if you have members of your family who are willing to like help in the kitchen and do, even if they don't know what they're doing, but you're like, just cut this or stir this or whatever, it's fun to kind of do those things together. So making food at home isn't always a consequence or a punishment, even though I know sometimes it feels like it. When you'd rather be going out, but you can make it kind of fun. You could do it with your kids, even on a weeknight, right? Like people have Taco Tuesday or, what's new Wednesday, try something new every Wednesday, or you can kind of make it a fun thing to involve your family as well. I think in the planning, when sometimes I'm sure for some people that really feels like a chore.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's such a great tip, Jen. I have boys that are in the preteen age group, and they're watching social media and they're watching food prep. And it's really cool to see them get involved in the kitchen. And they love going and eating out and trying out new foods, but getting them to help with food prep actually reduces that eating out budget. So it's been really great for our finances. And getting them involved, you're going to be providing your kids with that same skill of preparing food at home, which is fabulous to have both for their health and for their budget. I thought a cool thing that we could share would be what our biggest struggle is when it comes to eating at home and maintaining a grocery budget. So I will share mine. The first one I have is I tend to buy things at the grocery store that I feel are healthy and foods that I should eat. And often those can be the things that don't end up getting used. So I have been trying to be more intentional, and I do a reality check of, asking myself, am I actually going to eat this in the next week? And if I'm not, then I will avoid that purchase. If I commit to using it, I put it at the front of the fridge so I can see it on a regular basis. Because for whatever reason, those types of foods get pushed to the back, and then you find them a couple of weeks later and they're just a mess and not edible. So I would say that is the biggest struggle with food when it comes to our grocery shopping. Sybil, what's your biggest struggle?
I would say keeping up with what people are liking at the time, right? We've talked about this before. Like, the kids love something and you can't get enough, they're always going out the door and on the list. And then all of a sudden you realize, oh my gosh, we've got so many extra, this kind of granola bar or whatever it might be, or even a vegetable, like they'll be gung ho on broccoli. And like almost every night we're having broccoli and then it's like done. So that's a struggle is kind of trying not to waste money when that transition's happening, and be aware of what's in your cupboard and what they're eating, and ask them. They don't know and they don't want to go to the grocery store. At least my teenagers don't anymore anyway. But it's like, well, you got to tell me something because I'm going to stop buying that because you're obviously not eating it. So just trying to
That's
keep up
funny.
with that.
We bought a dozen Jamaican patties because my youngest son loved them. We have 11 in the freezer and they've been there for a while. So I can definitely relate to that struggle.
All right. Well, I like a Jamaican patty, so I'll come over. Um, So I think my biggest struggle, also same with the healthy eating. I'm like, I'm going to do this. We're going to have, and then I am like I didn't think this through. Like every meal of the week was like trying to be super healthy, and which sometimes, not always, for sure, not always, but the way that I prefer to cook, those meals tend to take a little bit longer for me to prepare. But that's just my style. Everybody's different, right? With how we cook and what we like to cook. So my biggest struggle, and this is going to sound ridiculous, but for people out there who really like to cook, who like to try new things, who are willing to like do all the cooking steps and prep, the biggest struggle for me is not buying a ton of extra stuff at the store. And I will use it, but like I will be like, I need these 7 cool spices. I need this one kind of sauce. Oh no, I'll make the sauce myself, but I need 8 ingredients to make it. Like, and I'm like, Jen, rein it in. You can't do this every week, right? So I still do that, but I try to spread it out a little bit. And I try to figure out ways that I can buy those things for less. So another really good tip is to buy, if you can find it, buying things in bulk, like bulk spices. We have a grocery store in our area. It has, you guys, I should take a video. I couldn't even do it in a picture. It would need a video. And it has this huge bulk spice section. So instead of spending like $10 on a thing of spice that you're only going to use a tiny bit of, I can spend 25 cents and just get like a few teaspoons of it. for something that I'm going to use. And that has been a really good way for me to save. I've tried to purchase whatever I can there in bulk. They have things like lentils and rice, all different types of rices and all things. So if you just need a small amount for something, or if you just want to try something and you don't want to buy the whole box because you're like, I don't know if I'm going to like black lentils, then you can just buy a small amount and try it. And I think that's a really good tip. You kind of have to search around for a store that has bulk in your area, but a lot of them do have it. It's a good one. Okay, I'll give you another. Let's stick with bulk. How about places like Costco and Sam's Club? Be a trap, right? We can save money there. We really do the math. I walk around Costco and I sometimes take out my phone calculator and I'm like, I just did it the other day. This item will be X amount per serving. That is much cheaper than if I went to the restaurant and bought that. But do I want to spend $2.50 per breakfast serving? I was like, I don't know. And then we were like, well, maybe sometimes that's okay, but not every morning. So then we purchased that. So I think buying in bulk can be a great way to save if you're really thoughtful about it. But if you throw everything that looks delicious in your cart, then you end up way overspending. Do you guys bulk shop at all like that?
I don't. And what I was finding was some of the sizes were so big. So, for example, if we wanted to have pickles, I find getting a smaller jar, even though it can be more expensive for what you're getting, will actually use it. The large jars, it was taking up too much space in the fridge. Whenever we bulk shopped, we have a very small kitchen, so the overflow had to go somewhere else, and then we were rebuying the same stuff because we weren't checking before heading out to the store. And especially with the kids' stuff, when their preferences changed, then we were stuck with a huge quantity of muffins or whatever the food was. So I definitely found that to be challenging for us. So we tend to stick to a traditional grocery store, and we do some runs to smaller markets to get fruits and vegetables that are in season. One of the best ways that I have found, if I do overpurchase something, so if we buy fruit and it doesn't get used, is I do freeze it and I'll use it for smoothies in the morning. And that way we've been able to cut down on waste, on fruit waste quite a bit. We're using virtually all of it, most of the time. So that's been a big help. Sybil, what about you? Are you a bulk shopper?
I love that idea, Marilee, of freezing things. We freeze bananas because I make banana bread, gluten-free banana bread with them. But I hadn't thought about freezing other fruit for smoothies. I love that idea. We're always buying frozen fruit for smoothies. So we do bulk shopping at Costco about every other week. And we only have a very limited number of things that we buy there. And we pretty much know exactly what's that. Actually, on our whiteboard, it says Costco and then next to regular grocery. So we like maple syrup, for example, is something that's far cheaper for high quality at Costco. So that if we're going low, that goes on the Costco list versus the grocery store list. So that's kind of how we do it. And I like their clothing and other stuff too, their house stuff, right? So that's kind of a nice benefit. But that's how we do it. And you also need to think about cost per serving if you need that number of servings, but also the brand. They only have, one or two choices, one or two brands. And are you, buying bulk of something in a different brand than you would normally want just because you're getting better value? But it all comes into play. It's all our mindset. It's all how we feel about our purchases when we do look at the numbers in the end. We make those decisions, from there. So yeah, this has been an amazing conversation. I think it's time to wrap it up. So thank you so much for listening. Be sure to follow our podcast, like and subscribe our YouTube channel. We're on all the major podcast platforms. We'd love to hear from you. Tell us what you're thinking, what you want to know about all things money.